I'll never forget the sound of my necklace snapping. It wasn't just the chain breaking, it was years of silent resentment, jealousy, and manipulation boiling over in one violent moment. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My mother's fingers gripped the locket at my neck so tightly that I thought she might rip my skin too. And then, snap. It flew from my chest like it had been yanked out of my soul. Landed right in the dip tray next to my aunt's half-eaten sandwich. "You selfish disgrace," she screamed, right there in front of the entire family. Everyone went quiet. My cousin stopped giggling. My uncle paused mid-sip. Even the baby in the corner stopped fussing, like even he knew something dangerous had just cracked open in the room. I stood frozen, my chest burning where the necklace used to lie. My voice wouldn't come out. She pointed a trembling, furious finger at me. "How dare you refuse to sign that house over? It wasn't even meant for you. You think you're better than all of us now because your dead grandfather handed you the keys to his little fairy tale cottage? You're pathetic." I should have seen this coming. Ever since the will was read, the air in the family had turned venomous. Grandpa left the lake house to me. Not to my mother. Not to my uncles. Just me. They expected I'd be a good girl and sign it over. I didn't. And that's when they turned. "I raised you," she kept shouting. "I sacrificed for you, and this is how you repay me." That house should have gone to the family. Not some ungrateful little girl playing grown-up. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just looked at her, and, for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. Not fear. Not sadness. Nothing. Because while she was losing control, while they were all showing me who they really were, I already knew something they didn't. Something I had done last week. Quietly. Carefully. Something that would change everything by morning. They thought the house was all Grandpa left me. They had no idea what else I had taken from them. And, trust me, they weren't ready for it. After she tore off the necklace, she smirked like she'd won something, like she'd broken me. But she hadn't. If anything, I saw her more clearly than ever. I bent down slowly, picked up the locket from beside the stained napkin, and held it in my palm. The chain was broken, but the locket was still intact. My fingers closed around it like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. That locket held a picture of me and Grandpa on the dock at Lake Willoughby. I was 7. My hair was in wild curls. His hand rested gently on my shoulder like he was guarding me from the world. I stood up and looked around the room. Everyone was staring at me, my cousins, who never took me seriously. My Aunt Lorraine, who always called me the emotional one. My father, silent as always, pretending not to pick sides, but his eyes avoiding mine like they held shame. "I'm not signing it over," I said calmly. My voice was quiet, but it carried like a blade through butter. "I don't owe any of you a thing." That's when my cousin Jeremy laughed. "Come on, Sam. Don't act like you earned it. You were the soft one Grandpa felt sorry for. It should have gone to the family." I blinked. "I am family." "Barely," my mother muttered. "Always out on your own, playing the victim." My chest tightened, but I stayed still. I knew if I reacted, they'd win. That's all they wanted. A show. A scene they could twist later into "see how unstable she is." So I stayed cold. I smiled. "You'll all see tomorrow," I said. "Enjoy your dinner tonight." And then I walked out of the house, past the lawn chairs and tiki torches, across the gravel driveway, past the car Dad never let me borrow as a teen because I wasn't responsible enough. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I drove home with the windows down, the locket still clenched in my hand. And by the time I reached my apartment, my phone was already buzzing with texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. Because what I had done wasn't just about keeping Grandpa's lake house. It was about what else he had left behind. Not in the will. Not in some envelope. But in a file. In a transfer. In a secret he shared only with me 3 weeks before he died. The trust. The silent ownership. The company. And by morning, every single person at that dinner was going to realize they didn't just lose a house. They lost everything. I couldn't sleep that night, not because I was upset, but because the silence in my apartment was finally peaceful. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Not free in a dramatic, throw it all away kind of way. I mean the kind of freedom where you stop waiting for approval. Where you stop trying to be enough for people who are committed to misunderstanding you. I curled up on the couch, barefoot, legs pulled to my chest, and opened Grandpa's old leather journal. He'd given it to me one afternoon, sitting at the lake house just 3 weeks before the stroke that ended everything. He was wearing that red flannel shirt I loved, sipping black coffee on the porch, while I was trying to fix the broken screen door for the 100th time. "I trust you more than I trust anyone," he said. I'd laughed. "Grandpa, I can barely keep my succulents alive." But he wasn't joking. He handed me that journal, a little battered but well-loved, and said, "Everything's in here. Read it when I'm gone. But only after the will is read." I didn't understand it then. But now, sitting alone in my dimly lit apartment, flipping through its pages, it all made sense. On page 47, there was a name, a company, an ownership document, and at the bottom, his signature. Dated, stamped, witnessed. Blake and Ashcroft Holdings. 70% ownership. Transferred to Samantha Blake. Not to my mother. Not to Uncle Dean or Aunt Lorraine. Me. Because years ago, while they were busy mocking him for being old school and ignoring him at holiday dinners, I was the only one who visited, who listened, who helped him sort out the boxes in the attic, labeled with fading ink and war-era stamps. He saw me, and he rewarded me. But I knew this couldn't just be about revenge. I wasn't going to rub it in their faces like they expected. I wasn't like them. That wasn't who Grandpa raised me to be. Still, the truth needed to come out. So the next morning, I dressed carefully. A clean, simple navy dress. No dramatic makeup. No jewelry. Just the locket, now attached to a new chain. I walked into the Blake and Ashcroft downtown office like I'd walked in 100 times as a kid tagging along with Grandpa, except this time, I wasn't a visitor. When I walked past reception, the same woman who once asked me to wait outside blinked at me. "Ma'am, do you have an appointment?" I turned slightly. "Tell Mr. Harrison Blake, that's my uncle, that the majority shareholder has arrived." Her face paled. I'm sorry?" I handed her the document. Not a copy. Not a scan. The original. She read it once, then again. She stood up so fast her chair rolled into the wall. "Please, just wait right here." I nodded and took a seat. Crossed my legs. Waited. Upstairs, chaos must have erupted because 10 minutes later, I heard loud voices, rushed footsteps, and then the elevator opened. My uncle, my mother, and their lawyer came down like storm clouds. My mother looked furious. My uncle looked pale. And me? I smiled. "You thought you took everything from me last night," I said softly. "But Grandpa left something behind you couldn't steal." Their lawyer tried to speak, but I cut him off. "The trust is airtight. The signatures are real. And I already had it notarized and registered with the board this morning. Effective immediately, I control 70% of this company." The house was just the beginning. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came. Her eyes darted around like she was searching for a way out. And my uncle, Mr. Big Man in a gray suit, just stood there, shoulders deflating. Because they finally understood. Everything they built, everything they thought they controlled, now belonged to the girl they humiliated. And I wasn't just keeping the house. I was taking the family legacy with me. They stood there in stunned silence, like statues chipped and cracking under the weight of a truth they never imagined would catch up to them. My mother's lips quivered first. "This isn't right," she whispered, shaking her head, like saying it enough times would erase the ink on the documents. "Your grandfather would never." "He did," I said. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. He knew exactly what he was doing. And deep down, you know it too. She turned to the lawyer, her voice rising like a drowning woman grabbing at air. "There's got to be a loophole, something to contest. That document, it has to be fake." But the lawyer, A man who'd spent most of my childhood brushing me off at family barbecues, just sighed and gave her the slow, painful truth. It's not fake. It's binding. Fully executed, fully legal. It holds more weight than the will. The trust was set up separately, privately, and with full capacity. My Uncle Harrison staggered back like someone had hit him in the gut. She doesn't know how to run this company, he snapped, his voice rising in panic. She's a teacher. She fixes screen doors and reads books about coastal history. She's not a businesswoman. I tilted my head. Neither were you when Grandpa brought you in. You failed your first restaurant venture and lost over $500,000. I read the ledgers. Grandpa saved you from ruin. Twice. He blinked. The air sucked out of him like a deflated balloon. My mother was trembling now. You're doing this out of spite. No, I said quietly. I'm doing this because for once, I'm not letting anyone guilt me out of what I've earned. Grandpa trusted me. You think I was just his charity case, but I was the only one who showed up when it mattered. While you were busy counting what you thought you'd inherit, I was there, making coffee, listening to him talk about his regrets, his vision, his fears. And then I looked my mother right in the eyes. You ripped the locket off my neck last night like you were ripping away my worth, I said, voice low and even. But you didn't break me. You just made it clear I was never part of this family unless I did what you wanted. And I'm done doing that. The lawyer cleared his throat. As of this morning, the controlling stake has been transferred. Samantha will need access to all files, accounts, and board contacts. The transition begins today. I stood tall, heart pounding, but my hands were steady. You're not being removed, I said. Not yet. But you will report to me. And from this moment forward, your influence is no longer unchecked. Uncle Harrison's face flushed red. You can't do this. I already did, I interrupted. And I turned away. I walked past the glass walls, the marble floors, the receptionist who now looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. And as I stepped into the elevator, alone, I exhaled. Not from relief. No, not yet, but from finally being done with begging to be seen. I was done shrinking. Done explaining. Done letting people treat me like an extra in the story of my own life. Now, I was holding the pen, but there was still one more thing I needed to do. Because the story didn't end with the company. It didn't even end with the house. There was something else, something I hadn't told anyone yet. A letter, locked in Grandpa's journal, with instructions. A final page I hadn't turned. And it would take everything I had left in me to follow it. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't pour a glass of wine. I didn't cry. I didn't even change out of my dress. I went straight to the cedar box beneath my bed and pulled out Grandpa's journal. I'd read every word of it over the past 3 weeks, except one final folded page taped to the inside of the back cover. The envelope was sealed with wax, dark red, the old-fashioned way, and on the outside, in Grandpa's shaky handwriting, it simply read, "Only open this when they turn on you." I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, just holding it. My heart thudded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I peeled the wax seal back slowly. Inside was a letter. 1 page. Neat. Intentional. And as I read, my hands started to shake. My Sam, if you're reading this, then you already know the truth. They never deserved what they were waiting for. Not the house. Not the company. Not you. But there's more. You remember the cabin out by Linwood Creek? The one I always said was just for fishing? That land sits on a gold vein. I bought it in 1982 from a man who didn't realize what he had. Over the years, I kept it off the books. Quiet. Even from the family. I wanted to pass it on to someone who understood value beyond money. There's a deposit box key hidden in the floorboard under the bed in that cabin. And in that box, the mineral rights, the claim documents, and $1.2 million I moved offshore before the cancer scare. It's yours. Not to flaunt. Not to throw in their faces. To build your life. Start your real dream, whatever that is. Not the one they told you were supposed to have. And if they come crawling, and trust me, they will, don't harden. Just don't bend. You were never meant to live under their rules. Love you always, Grandpa. I reread it 5 times. Each line hit like a thunderclap. I wasn't just the owner of a house or a company. I had the power to walk away from them entirely and thrive. The next day, the calls started. Aunt Lorraine called crying. Said she was ashamed of how everyone treated me. She wanted to have lunch. Uncle Harrison emailed asking for a second chance to talk things through. Even my father, who hadn't said a word when Mom humiliated me, sent a text. You know I've always respected you. Maybe we can rebuild. But the one that broke me wasn't any of them. It was Mom. She showed up at my door, eyes tired, makeup smudged like she hadn't slept. I know I went too far, she whispered. But that house, I thought we'd all be taken care of. I was scared. That's all. Please, Sam. We're family. I looked at her for a long time. For a moment, I saw the mother I remembered from childhood, the one who tucked me in, who braided my hair, who kissed my bruised knees. But that woman was gone. This one had let her hunger for control and entitlement drown the rest of her humanity. Still, I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just said, you don't get to treat people like dirt and then cry when they stand up. Grandpa saw something in me, and I finally see it too. So no, I'm not signing anything over. I'm not giving back what was never yours to begin with. I'm not playing the scapegoat anymore. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. And Mom, you didn't just rip a necklace off my neck. You ripped off the last thread of guilt I had about walking away from you. I closed the door. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. It's been 6 months now. The company is running better than ever. I kept half the staff, restructured the rest, and brought in a real operations manager who doesn't talk down to women. I went to the Linwood Creek cabin alone, lifted the floorboard, and found the key just where Grandpa said it would be. Everything in that safety deposit box was real, verified, legitimate. A fortune I never expected, but one I now know how to protect. And I started something new, a grant fund named after Grandpa, for women trying to rebuild their lives after family betrayal. Because I know now, revenge is just survival in disguise. And growth. Growth is building something so solid that no one can ever pull it from your neck again. Not even your own mother. If this story hits you even a little, just hit that like button. It helps more than you think. Don't forget to subscribe if you've ever felt this kind of pain. You're not alone.